Well, Happy New Year to everyone out there. We pray and hope that your 2024 was successful, but your 2025 will be even better. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and today we're going to discuss the memorial for Carol Pretlow, professor in the political science department, remembering her and her legacy and impact that she's had upon students. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville. Once again, we want to thank you again for joining us as for our first show in the new year. We are so grateful and thankful for your support all in 2024. And we know that 2025 is going to be even greater for us here on Stay the Water. That's right. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Well, listen, we had a lot of great things happen for us in 2024 at Norfolk State and here in the Commonwealth. And this year, we're looking for an even greater impact that we have. You know, this part of the year, we have our show where we discuss the General Assembly because the legislative session starts this Wednesday. That's right. It is the start of the general session on this Wednesday at 12 noon. If you remember last several shows, we discussed where the governor read out his budget last month in December. And now it's time for the General Assembly to go to work, both in the House and in the Senate. And the process begins for new laws that will impact us here in the Commonwealth. Now, next week, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about new laws that are going to impact us that went into effect on January 1st. And then we're going to do a preview of various things to look for here in 2025 as the General Assembly gets started. But today I wanted to start this year off with a look at the impact of a dear colleague who passed away during the Christmas holidays, none other than Professor Carol Pretlow. Carol Pretlow was not only a professor here at Norfolk State University for over 3 decades, but she was also a friend of mine. She was a mentor and someone that I enjoyed talking to every single time that I saw her. Her and I, we shared an office suite where my office was literally 2 doors down from her office. And when I came into the office suite, I walked in and everyone has to see her because her office was right there. And it was such a joy to have known her and known not just her as a person, but also known her as a professor, the impact that she had on the students. One thing about her is that she loved her students, and anyone that came around her, you know that she loved her students and came to work every day with that passion and that purpose. Who, again, a member of our Department of Political Science here in Norfolk State, dedicated educator, respected scholar, and also an advocate for those things affecting marginalized communities, African Americans, social justice, and a tireless civic engager as relates to all things justice, politics, and public policy. She was also a regular member of Another View Roundtable with Barbara Ham-Lee, who will also be doing a tribute to her on her show on WHRV on this Thursday. But I thought it'd be best and fitting to hear about her impact from the persons that she impacted the most, and that's her former students. So on this show, we have several former students that have joined us that are going to talk to us about the impact that Carol Pretlow, Dr. Pretlow, had upon them. Today we have with us, joining us first, none other than NSU alum Jamie Turner. Ms. Turner, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dr. Claville?
I'm doing great. It's always good to hear from our alums that are out there doing great things in the world. You know, you were definitely one of those students, not just during your time here, but even after you left NSU, that stayed engaged, and one that definitely is making an impact out there in the community. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so right now I am a co-founder of a nonprofit called Cash In Grad Out. We're dedicated to advocating for the cancellation of student debt for HBCU students, but also expanding that reach into other endeavors to ensure that our students from our institutions have the resources that they need to succeed later in life because we are so underfunded and so underlooked.
Absolutely. And for those that may not remember, but about 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, in Washington, D.C., you were one of the ones that Pharrell Williams basically wrote a check for all of your student loan debt and based upon the work that you guys did. And listen, being fortunate enough to serve on that panel and seeing the joy, the tears was tremendous.
Absolutely. One of the best moments of my life.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about, I want you to talk to us a little bit about the impact that Dr. Pretlow had upon your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Dr. Pretlow as a professor for a few years. I think I didn't ever have her as a professor except for my freshman year. And she just taught me so much as a person. She taught me to think outside the box, how to consider other perspectives. She really ran her political science courses the way they were supposed to. They weren't biased. She didn't get us to pick a side. She just always wanted us to be very open-minded and free thinkers. I remember I told her I wanted to be a politician, and she said, "Good luck with that," because I wasn't even 100% sure. I think I just wanted to be one because I thought I was supposed to. And then after she said that, she got me thinking, and I was like, actually, I don't want to be a politician. I would rather be on more so advocacy and policy and being directly involved with the people because I could never sit at a desk. That is just me. I'm very much a worldly person, and she taught me so much. I have to give her so much credit for my political education, especially when she told me about her time as an organizer, the time that she has spent as a scholar and educator, the ways that she's impacted the world, her field of work. Honestly, just an amazing woman.
Absolutely. And not just a professor, but also a Black female professor. We know that the world of politics and public policy and law, is hard for many individuals that, basically don't have a lot of history in that area, African Americans, other marginalized communities, but even women as well. Talk to us a little about the impact that her as a woman, professional woman, had upon you.
Oh, absolutely. I remember Dr. Pretlow would always talk about how she was always one of the only not just Black people, but Black women in the room, and she always made a place for herself at the table. And she would use their tactics to her advantage. Like, okay, you want to be racist? Well, I'm going to use that to my advantage, and you have to give me money. Oh, you need some diversity, equity, inclusion? Well, here I am. She always basically bulldoze her way into rooms. She wasn't going to ask for a seat at the table. She was always going to take it or even just make her own. She even told me about her time as an organizer when she was younger at Fisk. She had been slightly involved with the Black Panther chapter around there. And she was just so inspiring. And then as a Black woman, especially in hearing her story, she went to multiple different institutions. I remember she would always tell us that story. And she just kind of got through the adversity, especially when she had an unfortunate incident that has happened to many women. It was just hearing her story and how she was able to persevere and just become very renowned, especially within her field. People were always calling her for her opinion, calling her to do research. It's like she really shows you that there are different avenues within the political science field that they don't tell you about, especially as a woman, especially because it's an old boys club. But she made it so that it wasn't.
Absolutely. And obviously her impact is still resonating in your life, especially with the work that you're doing, the advocacy and fighting for student loan forgiveness. Ms. Turner, thank you so much for your perspective and also sharing your story of the impact that Dr. Pretlow had upon you. And please know here in the Spartan Nation, we're all proud of you. And we're also continuing to looking for greater from you as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And honestly, rest in power to Dr. Pretlow.
Behold the green and gold. As we continue remembering the legacy and the impact of Dr. Carol Pretlow, mentor, educator, advocate, professor here at Norfolk State University, we have with us another former student, Destiny Jackson. Destiny, thank you for joining us here on Stay the Water.
Thank you.
Destiny, we're, as a former student and current student now, a senior here at Norfolk State, getting ready on your next journey into studying law. Talk to us a little bit about when you heard about Dr. Pretlow passing.
I was sitting at home, and I remember just checking my email, and I saw the email sharing the information, and I honestly was in shock because before I had left campus, she was around. She was walking around like how she usually does, very upbeat. So it definitely took me by shock. It was nothing that I really expected. And I had her this upcoming semester for constitutional law, the second part. I've had her for the past 3 years, so I was looking forward to having another course with her.
Yes. One thing she talked about, and you mentioned upbeat. She was always upbeat, she always talked about her students. She loved her students. And for over 30 years, she came here every day ready to lead with that type of passion. Tell us a little bit about her impact upon you as a professor.
So coming into Norfolk State, I was very unsure about the career path that I wanted to take. But I quickly realized, the passions that I had. And the first professor that I had once I started to take that route was Dr. Pretlow. And she shared her experiences as a law student and attending law school, especially during the era that she was raised upon. And just hearing those obstacles that she faced but later overcame definitely inspired me to continue on with my journey of becoming an attorney. And additionally, she definitely gave us encouraging words. She helped us with the resources that we needed, resources that a lot of us don't have, being first-generational law students. So having her there to help guide us and lead us along the way definitely helps me a lot. And I just really appreciated the rawness of how she explained things to us. She never sugarcoated anything, and she never gave anything more than what it needed. So she definitely gave us the real life version, but also with that real life version continued to motivate us and encouraged us to go along that path and that route. So I definitely appreciated all the words of encouragement and assistance that Dr. Pretlow gave to me.
Speaking of a person, first generation, like you said, she went to law school and graduate school in an era where, it was rough for African Americans, especially right. African American women, and inspiring to public service and a career in law like yourself. Tell us a little bit about the impact of having a black female professor that pretty much blazed the way for many, many, many to come after her.
It was very important to me to see someone that was in a space that not many of us are in, and a black woman at that. Someone that looks like me in that space. It definitely gave me, again, the encouragement that I needed to continue on, because a lot of times when you see people in those spaces that are nothing like you, it definitely pulls the question of, well, can I even do this? And a lot of times I would, have conversations, private, personal conversations with her after class, discussing these visions and these dreams that I had. And sometimes I would sound a little down. I would sound a little indifferent about it. I remember it was one time where I was about to begin an internship in Washington, D.C., and I was telling her I'm not sure if I'm cut out for it, being that I'm one first-generational law student. I'm black and I'm a woman, and at that, I saw a lot of the students came from Ivy Leagues, and I'm coming from an HBCU, so a lot of times it definitely makes you feel indifferent. However, Dr. Pretlow definitely gave me the push that I needed to continue on. And just having her words and her encouragement and seeing her in those spaces, it really gave me what I needed. And I think it's very important for people to continue to have that impact that Dr. Pretlow had, especially on the campus of Norfolk State University.
Absolutely. And when you talk about class and giving it to you straight, tell us about a memorable moment of her in class and how at that time period where she was instructing you guys.
Dr. Pretlow had a lot of sarcasm, I will say, which was good because in in courses like this, it can be so uptight and so serious to where you do need a laugh sometimes. And there will be times where she tells us about her own experiences while she was in law school. And a lot of the times it was very funny moments, because at that time, again, it was in an era where it was very rare for a Black woman to attend law school. And she would just share those moments with us. And she was just full of life and full of sarcasm. And during her instruction, she would definitely intertwine that into her teaching us about how to do these things before we attend law school. So I definitely think she prepped us for what is to come in law school during class, but she also incorporated those real life experiences and laughter to kind of show, it's not always, serious all the time. There's times where you definitely can enjoy those moments.
Absolutely. Well, Destiny, her legacy will continue to live on, not just from the classes she taught, but more importantly, through students like yourself, and as you go on to blaze new trails and do great things. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective and the impact that Professor Pretlow had upon your life.
Thank you.
As we continue to remember the life and legacy of educator, scholar, and NSU Spartan to the core, to the heart, Dr. Kara Pretlow, we have with us another of her former students that's doing great things here in Hampton Roads, none other than former SJ President, Mr. Jalen Jury. Jalen, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I'm talking with former students that, of course, I've known and have been a part of our NSU family, but more specifically, that had Dr. Pretlow and the impact that she had upon your life. Jalen, tell us a little bit about the impact that Dr. Pretlow had upon you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on this morning, Dr. Clavell. Dr. Pretlow wasn't just a professor. She was a mentor. She was a guide for myself and many of my classmates who I believe that she believed the potential in every student that she had the opportunity to teach. I had the privilege of taking 3 classes with her during my time at Norfolk State. And in each one of those classes, she challenged us to think critically, to lead boldly through political science, and to never shy away from standing up for what was right. And so it truly was a privilege to have Dr. Pretlow as a professor.
When you talk about her teaching you to stand up, one thing about her is that people know her as being an advocate, that she did not, she was small in stature, but you better not pick a fight with her or an argument. She was not going to stand down. She was not going to let go. How was it having an African-American female that blazed the trails in law and education and in the many areas that she specialized in? What was that impact upon you coming into college here at NSU?
I think a lot of former students in the political science department from the political science department in Norfolk State would say that you will find mentors in many of the teachers and professors that you have in the department. And Dr. Pretlow was one of them. Her ability in seeing what we couldn't see in ourselves, her ability to push us to think bigger and encourage me to step into leadership roles with confidence and integrity in a way that I didn't see or know that I was able to do. She made it clear that leadership wasn't just about holding a title or running for office, but it's about using your voice. When I ran for SJ president, I would go to her and seek out some advice. And her number one point that she always made to tell me was to stay true to myself and make sure I stand up for what was right, and to always use my voice to represent other people. And so she was, like you said, small in stature, but her impact that she had on the political science department and the greater Norfolk State community is tall and large. I think everyone agrees with that.
Speaking of using your voice to speak up, her legacy is definitely seen in the many, many students, thousands of students that she's educated, and continue to pour in, with well wishes and just kind words and memories. But you're one that's using your voice that she impacted in your community in Portsmouth. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I currently have the privilege of serving as the chairman, the inaugural chairman of the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission and Task Force in the city of Portsmouth. I was appointed to that commission back in April and voted in as chairman this past November, and we've been tasked with leading the efforts in this inaugural convening of this task force in the city of Portsmouth to combat crime and gun violence, bring people together in the city of Portsmouth and the greater Hampton Roads area to come up with solutions to combat the issue of crime and gun violence. But what I can say is that I truly believe Dr. Pretlow had a direct influence on my journey in becoming commissioner. She taught me my approach to my leadership style today, again, as I mentioned, to lead with boldness and a sense of responsibility, and her encouragement, again, to stand firm on my beliefs and to prioritize what is right. And so one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that I actually had an opportunity about a year ago to speak to a few of Dr. Pretlow's classes. And I mentioned to her that I had interest on serving on some boards and commissions, and she told me to go for it and to not be afraid. And at the time, I thought that why would I get appointed? Why should I be voted in onto a commission in any city, let alone my hometown? And she encouraged me to do so. And so I firmly believe, and I can honestly say that it is because of Dr. Pretlow that I'm able to have the privilege of sitting on this commission, but also being the inaugural chairman at just 22 years old.
Absolutely. You know, Jalen, you're one of our students in political science and here at NSU that you can say you did a lot of things at a very, very young age, from running for SGA president, not being a senior or junior, to also serving as on the SCHEV Student Advisory Board here State Commission of Higher Education here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and what you're doing now in your city of Portsmouth, going back to your community. Lastly, if there was one memory you could share of Dr. Pretlow, what would it be?
I would say, again, Dr. Pretlow's impact goes far beyond any single person. She was an astute political scientist, an extraordinary educator, and she was a compassionate mentor. And I will say that her support when people weren't around outside of the classroom is what I will never forget about Dr. Pretlow. And it is a huge loss, not just for the political science department, but for the greater Norfolk State community thus far, and the Norfolk community as well. And so we truly were blessed to have her as an educator at NSU.
Mr. Jury, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and the impact and the legacy of Dr. Kara Pretlow upon your life. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
And finally, as we continue to remember the life and legacy of Dr. Kara Pretlow, professor, mentor, educator, advocate, lifelong Spartan here at Norfolk State University, we have with us former student whose journey himself can be related right back to the influence that Dr. Pretlow had in his life. And that's none other than Malik Watkins. Malik, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good today. How are you?
Doing great. Happy New Year to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Happy New Year and happy holidays. Hope you had a good holiday season.
Absolutely. Well, you know, as we're this particular show, and I mentioned earlier, we're remembering the life and legacy of Dr. Kara Pretlow upon the NSU community, and I thought that it would be fitting to hear it from the persons that she impacted the most and that she cared about the most, and that's the students. When I arrived on campus, you were one of my first students that I had as well. And I remember, you know, you and, of course, your classmates, how active you were on campus, engaged you were, you know, in every aspect, the advocacy on campus and just setting the tone in the classroom and out. And I know that Dr. Pretlow was definitely a part of that. Ms. Watkins, tell us a little bit about the impact that Dr. Pretlow had in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. We took a variety of classes, obviously being a political science student. But, you know, some of those classes were really able to take it beyond just the textbook. And I think Dr. Pretlow was the perfect example of that. While we had a textbook, she made sure that she adapted her teaching to engage in what was happening in the world. And, you know, living in Virginia and going to school in Virginia, there's an election every year. So, you know, talking about those things, talking about the different court cases, because I was in her intro to jurisprudence class, she really inspired us to think further and, you know, use that knowledge to possibly go out and make a difference like, you know, she has and how she was currently doing with teaching.
Absolutely. When you talk about real life and her taking the textbook and apply it to real life, I've mentioned earlier with others sharing their memories that she was, even though she was small in stature, her voice was strong and she would not back down from anything, any type of discussion, any argument, any point, because she lived a rich life during a time of segregation up until now, and being a black female in the areas that she specialized in the areas of law, education, international relations, and the like. Tell us a little bit about a memorable moment that you had with her in class.
Yeah, I can actually think about a very specific moment. It was, I can't remember the exact case, but something that came out about the Affordable Care Act. So she decided to use that moment to make a big dialogue in class. And if you knew her as a professor, you knew that, while her assignments were important, what she really wanted from you the most was to discuss what was happening in class. And so we had this really big discussion, and then she was able to really give us insight about her personal experience and how something as the Affordable Care Act can help her. She had lived a very long life and, was born not too long after World War II, so she saw a lot, and she was able to really bring in some of those real-life experiences that she had personally dealt with, bring those to the classroom, and allow us to have a much broader conversation. And I think, for me, what made it so memorable is that when you hear things like Affordable Care Act, if you're not really paying so much attention, you don't necessarily know what it all entails. So, I'm a Gen Z person, so I didn't know, for example, before the Affordable Care Act, an insurance company could deny you coverage because of pre-existing conditions such as asthma. And, asthma is a very common thing. So her having that wealth of knowledge and being able to relate it back was really memorable. And I will never forget that day because it was a very heated discussion that we had as peers in the classroom and how she supported the discussion and conversation. Before you knew it, we had spent the whole class just simply talking about that.
Absolutely. Again, when I mentioned students that I believe that she impacted and whose students that made a difference in this community, not just the NSU community, but abroad, you're definitely one of those alums that I think of. Mr. Watkins, final moments. You have the final say as relates to Dr. Carol Pretlow.
Dr. Pretlow was just a loved woman. She was, like you said, short in stature, but she cared about her students. She was not going to waver in who she was for anyone. She still carried around her little flip phone. She wasn't driving. She was taking the time to work. And she just was supportive. The moment that I'll never forget is that during her class, I had got employment with the Democratic Party. And it was going to cause me to miss one day of class a week. I had her class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I was just so nervous. And I was just like, I don't know if I can take this job. But anyways, I had a talk with Dr. Pretlow, and she assured me, Malik, this class is important. Your future is just a tad bit more important. We'll make sure that you still get the knowledge. I'm not going to allow attendance to be the reason that you don't pass this class or take this opportunity that you were given. And her allowing me to miss class really set the framework for what my future would become, because that first position with the Democratic Party of Virginia opened so many doors for me. So I'll forever be grateful for her understanding and her support of me during that time.
And I think that's a perfect way to end this remembering Dr. Carol Pretlow, because it shows how she cares about the students. No matter what, she went the extra mile. Definitely someone who will be missed, whose impact upon this institution and the Department of Political Science is immeasurable. But most important, her impact upon our greatest asset here at Norfolk State University, and that's our students. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville. Thank you for joining us as we remember the great life and legacy of a life well lived, none other than my friend, Dr. Carol Pretlow. May she rest in peace. And until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.